Revealed, my lawyer's life-changing call exposed the incredible truth about my daughter-in-law. John Thompson's heart raced as he stared at his phone, the lawyer's gravelly voice echoing in his ear. What could possibly change everything? For years, he had proudly called himself a mechanic, a father, and a grandfather, his hands calloused from work, his soul filled with the warmth of family. But now, as Mike wrestled with anxiety over his job amidst the pandemic, and Sarah tirelessly tried to inject joy into their home, John felt a storm rumbling in their quiet suburb of Milwaukee. Every Sunday, John would watch his son and his bright daughter-in-law wrangle their two kids, laughter echoing through their cozy living room. Sarah was a force of nature, her infectious smile lighting up even the darkest days. Yet now, tension hung thick in the air, manifesting in heavy silences at dinner and fleeting glances. John could see the weight on Mike's shoulders, the anxiety gripping at his heart, inching closer to a breaking point. Days passed, filled with the occasional cheerful chatter of grandchildren and the relentless worry looming like a thick fog. Just when John believed things couldn't feel more fragile, his world tilted with the lawyer's revelation. A forgotten inheritance, a lost fortune connected to lineage. You're telling me there's money we didn't know about? John whispered, his heart pounding. Suddenly, the familiar embrace of family began to feel uncertain. What if Sarah's laughter hid ulterior motives? His thoughts spiraled out of control. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days melded into weeks, the Thompsons trapped themselves in a dangerous cycle of mistrust and judgment. Sarah faced not only John's growing doubt but also the judgmental whispers of neighbors who questioned her honor, fueling the flames of suspicion. You don't really need to work so hard, do you? They would sneer. What's your angle? Sarah kept her chin up, persevering through both scrutiny and strife, but inside, her heart ached. One evening, everything escalated during a family gathering. The kids were running wild, laughter masking the underlying tension until John could no longer contain himself. Did we ever need this money? Should we trust you? He asked Sarah, each word laced with unintentional venom. Silence crashed around them like broken glass. The kids froze, Sarah's smile faltered. Pain flashed across her face, but deeper than that was something else: sacrifice. In a moment of incredible clarity, she revealed the truth. She'd known about the inheritance all along but had chosen to keep it hidden, believing it would dishonor their struggles. John's chest tightened. Could he have misjudged her? As the night wore on, John stood on the edge of an emotional cliff, heart racing. Could the shame of his earlier suspicions be washed away? Would they come together through this dark chaos, or would the seeds of anxiety drive them apart forever? Tomorrow loomed, heavy with uncertainty but also the potential for healing. The morning light crept through the curtains, gently nudging John from his restless sleep. That conversation from the night before replayed in his mind like a haunting echo. Sarah's revelation about the inheritance had shaken him to his core. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything he thought he knew. Coffee brewed as the familiar sounds of excitement filled the house. Eli and Mia, his grandchildren, shouting and laughing, their innocent joy a stark contrast to the heaviness weighing on him. He knew he should join them, but his thoughts tangled in doubt. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd tarnished something beautiful the night before. How could he accuse someone he once held dear of deceit? Eventually, he dragged himself to the kitchen. Sarah stood there, pouring the coffee into 2 mugs. She turned, her expression cautious, searching his eyes for something, maybe an apology or understanding. "Good morning, John," she said softly, her voice catching slightly. "Morning," he replied, eyes dropping to the floor. A silence enveloped them, thick enough that it could almost be sliced. "About last night," Sarah began, but John raised his hand. I don't think I'm ready. Just can we take a moment? Her face fell, but she nodded, stepping aside to let him brew his coffee in peace. He could feel the tension pulling them further apart, like a rubber band stretched too thin. With each sip, he felt guilt wash over him, masking the bitter taste of the coffee. Later, he found Mike sitting on the back porch, head buried in his hands. John approached slowly, cautious not to intrude on whatever turmoil his son was dealing with. "Everything all right, son?" he asked, settling into a chair next to him. "Not really," Mike admitted, lifting his head. "I can't seem to shake the feeling that everything is falling apart. The kids are stressed. Sarah. I don't know how to help her." "Your mother-in-law has a lot on her plate too," John replied, probing cautiously. "I fought with Sarah last night." "About the inheritance?" Mike asked, surprised. John nodded. "I didn't trust her. I'm worried that money could change everything. I underestimated her. I hurt her, Mike." Mike sighed heavily. "Sometimes I think it would be easier if we didn't have to deal with money at all. But if it's there, maybe it's not the money itself that changes things. It's how we handle it together." John leaned back, absorbing his son's words. He realized that everyone was navigating their own struggles. Was the inheritance truly a gift, or would it be a dark cloud hanging over them? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues all around, John felt a stirring in his heart, a flicker of hope amidst the storm. He couldn't let his fears dictate his family's fate. It was time to talk, time to listen, and mend what was frayed. He stood, determined. "Let us get everyone together," he proclaimed. "We need to set things right." Mike's eyes met his, a spark of agreement igniting. "Sounds good." As they headed back inside, John felt the clouds of confusion begin to lift. But looming questions still hung thick in the air. How would Sarah respond? Would she forgive him? Tomorrow would reveal the answer. John paced in the living room, the weight of uncertainty weighing heavily on his shoulders. Mike had gone to gather Sarah, but it felt like an eternity waiting. Each tick of the wall clock echoed in his ears, counting down the moment when they would finally confront not only the inheritance but the cracks that had formed within their family. The sun slowly set, casting shadows that danced along the walls. He could hear the children's laughter erupting outside, a reminder of the life that still thrived, unburdened by adult worries. His heart ached at the thought that soon, he might disrupt that joy. When Sarah finally stepped through the door with Mike, the tension in the room shifted. She looked weary, her eyes reflecting a mix of hurt and determination. John's breath hitched as he took in her expression. How could he find the right words to bridge the gap he had created? "Thank you for coming," he started, his voice slightly shaky. "We need to talk." Sarah nodded but remained silent. The air thickened, pressing against them as if holding its breath in anticipation. "I've been thinking a lot about last night," John continued, struggling to find his footing. "About what I said. I was wrong to judge you. I let my fears cloud my judgment." Her gaze softened, but the hurt lingered. "I understand why you felt that way, John. It's a big change for all of us. But I never meant to deceive you." He swallowed hard, the lump in his throat heavy with regret. "I know I should have trusted you. Money can twist things, and I was scared it would tear us apart." Mike spoke up, his voice steady. "We can't let money drive a wedge between us. We need to work together. This family means too much." Their shared vulnerability hung in the air, a thread of hope weaving between them like the soft glow of the setting sun. "Maybe we need to look at this differently," Sarah suggested, her tone shifting towards resolution. "What if we sat down and discussed how the inheritance could benefit all of us, rather than dividing us?" A spark of agreement filled the room. "That sounds like a good idea," Mike said, nodding. "We could use it for the kids' college funds, or maybe a family vacation, something that brings us together instead of tearing us apart." John felt the warmth spreading through his chest, a flicker of hope igniting in the darkest corners of doubt. Yes, let us do that, he said, a smile breaking through his solemnity. This can be a new beginning. Laughter erupted once again in the garden, drawing their attention. Eli and Mia raced past the window, their carefree spirits a reminder of what they were fighting for. John glanced at Sarah, her expression softening as she caught a glimpse of the joy outside. Let us not forget that family matters most, she added, her voice gaining strength. Before anything else, we're a family. The promise hung delicately between them, a fragile yet resilient truth forming in that living room. As they moved closer to one another, a sense of unity blossomed, dispelling the shadows. But just as they began to feel a sense of relief, Mike's phone buzzed insistently on the table. Frowning, he picked it up and his face fell. It's the lawyer, he said, a hint of worry lacing his tone. He wants to talk now. John's heart sank. What more could there be? Should we take it? Mike asked, glancing between them. A dread filled the room, overshadowing the moment of hope they'd just discovered. What could happen next? What new revelations awaited them just around the corner? Everyone's eyes turned towards Mike, anticipation mounting as the phone rang again. Uncertainty loomed as they realized this was far from over. Mike took a deep breath and swiped the screen, putting the call on speaker. Hey, Mark, he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. Hey, Mike. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Mark's voice crackled through the speaker, casual yet somehow laden with urgency. No, just a family discussion, Mike replied, casting a wary glance at John and Sarah. Good. I'm glad I reached you. I wanted to discuss the inheritance matter, Mark said, his tone shifting. I have some updates. Something you all need to know. John's heart began to race again, uncertainty flooding through him. Did this update come from a place of concern or revelation? The question hung in the air as they leaned in closer to the phone. There's a stipulation in the will, Mark continued. It's a bit complicated, but it concerns how the funds are to be distributed. What do you mean? Sarah said, her voice taut with curiosity. The will emphasizes that the inheritance can only be accessed if all parties agree on how to utilize it, Mark explained. If you don't reach a consensus on its usage, it goes to a fund instead, one that benefits underprivileged children. This was your father's way of ensuring the money would have a positive impact. A pause followed, and the atmosphere became heavy with contemplation. John felt the words sinking, hitting deeper than expected. Are you serious? Mike spoke up, incredulous. He was always generous, but this feels extreme. It's almost manipulative. Maybe he just wanted to provoke a discussion about what really matters, Mark suggested. John found himself reflecting on his father's intentions. There had always been a strong belief in family unity, but this was pushing it. So, we have to work together. That's the only way. Exactly, Mark confirmed. This is more than just about the money, it's a test of your family's bond. If you want the inheritance, you will need to come together and decide how to use it in a way that feels right. Sarah took a step closer to John, their hands barely grazing each other. Perhaps that's what we've been avoiding, she whispered, the realization dawning upon her. We need to face this as a family. Not just for the money but for our relationships. Silence enveloped them as the reality settled in. Each one of them had been preoccupied with fears and judgments about the inheritance. They had allowed those worries to create distance instead of uniting them. Let us have a family meeting, then, John suggested, feeling a steady resolve. A real one. No fights, no secrets. Just us. We can talk openly about how we want to move forward. Agreed, Sarah nodded, her spirit lifting as she looked at him. This could be our chance. Before she could finish, Mike's phone buzzed again. They all flinched at the sudden noise, eyes darting back to the screen. I can't deal with any more surprises, he muttered, a sense of dread returning. What if it's another lawyer? John wondered aloud, anxiety creeping back in. Mike glanced at the screen and froze. it's not just Mark. It's the second lawyer from Dad's estate. Whatever was happening, it felt significant. Each shimmering hope began to dim as speculation hovered once more. What now? Sarah asked, gripping the edge of the table. Let us find out, Mike said, his finger hovering over the screen to accept the call. But they could all feel the shadows creeping in, the fear of what more might be revealed. What more secrets could the estate hold? And were they truly ready for the revelations to come? Mike's thumb finally pressed down, accepting the call, and the room buzzed with an electric tension. The voice on the other end was smooth yet authoritative. Hello, this is Helen from Mercer Associates. Am I speaking with Mike, John, and Sarah? Yes, it's us, Mike replied, barely concealing the edge in his tone. Thank you for taking my call. I'm reaching out because I have urgent information regarding your father's estate that needs to be discussed, mainly some outstanding documents that require your signatures. A collective sigh ran through the room, blending their concern with an odd sense of anticipation. What kind of documents? John asked, his heart pounding again. The air felt thick, each second stretching out in a cartoonish slow motion. Documents pertaining to the family trust, Helen responded calmly. Your father had specific ideas about how the funds should be safeguarded to prevent disputes, but it requires all of your input to proceed. Why now? Sarah interjected, wanting to understand the timing. It feels like we need to finish one conversation before starting another. I understand this is a lot right now, Helen continued. However, there are stipulations as discussed in the will that need immediate attention to ensure the trust is managed correctly. John's hands fidgeted, his anxiety morphing into frustration. Can't it wait until we're ready to talk about the inheritance? We're still processing everything. I'm afraid it cannot, Helen said, her voice steady. Your father's intention was to create a dialogue among you as family, ensuring transparency in the trust. This is part of that journey. The sooner you engage, the less chance there is for misunderstandings. John nodded, feeling the weight push against his chest. All right. We'll take a look at what you have. Can we do this over video call? Of course. I'll send the link right now, Helen replied. Within moments, their devices pinged, and Mike set up the video call while John and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. As the screen flickered to life, an image of a composed woman in a crisp suit appeared. Hello, everyone, she greeted, her smile professional but warm. Today, we will go through each document together. Minutes turned into an hour as Helen navigated through the documents, her voice echoing legal jargon that felt not just foreign but daunting. John could barely keep track. Still, he glanced at Sarah, who was taking notes with a furrowed brow, and Mike, who was silent, lost in thought. Just to clarify, Helen said, snapping them back to focus. If all parties cannot agree on how to allocate funds provided by your father, the decisions will go to a committee of trustees. Your father wanted this to be an avenue for greater family discussions, but also a way to protect the assets. A heavy silence hung in the air again. What if we don't agree? Mike asked quietly, his eyes darting between his siblings. Then I'm afraid the trust will remain dormant, and the funds cannot be distributed, Helen replied. Your father was very adamant about this. He believed it would encourage collaboration. We can't let money turn us against one another, John murmured, a realization dawning. It was more than just digits and assets. This is about us, and who we are as a family. As they continued to talk, layers peeled back within the conversation. The fear and tension they had carried for so long was starting to transform, allowing curiosity to surface. What if their father's plan was more profound than they had given him credit for? But as the discussion wound down, and Helen concluded by commenting on their father's hopes for them harmony and understanding, a final piece of information hung in the air like an unattended ember. There is also a clause regarding the involvement of family members in discussions concerning the usage of assets. It requires every adult child to attend discussions about family decisions. Missing one meeting could put everyone's interests at stake, Helen explained. John's heart dropped. Wait, what do you mean? We'll go into that next time. Helen smiled slightly, and the screen faded as she disconnected, leaving them suspended in a moment of disbelief. The reality of their father's final wishes was sinking in, and John could feel a knot in his stomach. Were they truly prepared to confront not only their grief but the magnitude of what those words meant? What happens when loyalty collides with suspicion, and who would pay the price? The silence in the room was deafening, each sibling lost in their own whirlwind of thoughts. John leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the cold stone as if it could anchor him to reality. The weight of their father's words crashed down on him. Could he really tie his fate to his siblings in this way? Mike shuffled through the papers Helen had shared. His brow creased with impatience. This isn't fair. We just lost Dad. Now we have to sit here and argue about money, about trust. It's not just about money, Sarah countered, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she folded her notes. He wanted us to talk. To work through this together. It feels like he had a plan for us. John watched Sarah, seeing the fire in her eyes mixed with vulnerability. It stunned him how, even at their father's passing, he could see pieces of the man they had lost reflected back in her. I just want to remember him, you know. Not get stuck in this mess. Remembering him means honoring what he wanted, Sarah said softly. This is still part of him being with us. What about you and me? Mike interjected, frustration bubbling. What if we don't want the same things? What if this journey causes more fights? With every passing moment, John's heart grew heavier. They could still argue, push and pull at every thread of their shared history, but the thought of losing each other felt like a journey toward solitude. He placed a hand over his chest, almost expecting to feel the beating heart of their father urging them toward unity. Maybe there's a way for us to navigate through this without tearing each other apart. Just as he finished, John's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced down, and the screen illuminated his worried face. It was a simple note from a family friend, thinking of you all. Remember to take care of each other. Right. We have to take care of each other. We can do this. John spoke more to himself than his siblings. Let us set a time. We can talk through it. Each of us share what we think, where we stand. Agreed, Sarah nodded, her expression firm. Mike, however, crossed his arms, exhaling sharply. I don't like being forced into a corner. What happens if I say one thing, and you guys think differently? Then we work through it, John replied, his voice insistent. Just like Dad would be wanted. Suddenly, the dynamics shifted within the tension. They weren't just siblings dealing with a will anymore, they were three individuals with their own fears, bound by the love for a man who believed in the strength of family. With every word spoken, he felt a flicker of hope igniting. But just as the atmosphere began to lighten, a more nagging question lurked beneath. What truths had their father actually hidden away? Were there things left unsaid that would come crashing down if they weren't careful? The weight of the unknown, the clauses, the decisions awaiting them still loomed. Each sibling was burdened, not just by grief but by the fear of the actions to come. As they prepared to leave the kitchen, John murmured, our next call is going to be the real test. Agitation danced in his stomach, unsure of where they would land. Would their father's faith in them be enough to hold them together, or would they be divided by the very legacies meant to unite them? The air buzzed with unspoken apprehension, and as they stepped away, the shadows seemed to whisper, beckoning them toward deeper revelations. In navigating their vulnerabilities, what truths might emerge next? The following days blurred together, a somber routine of dealing with the estate and their father's final wishes. John felt as if time itself had become surreal, dragging on yet flying by. The planned call loomed over him like a storm cloud, each minute building pressure. Mike usually tapped his fingers impatiently against the kitchen table, a physical manifestation of his nerves. Can't believe we're doing this, he grumbled, glancing at the clock for the umpteenth time. We barely made it through the last talk. What's the point of going around in circles again? Maybe we need to face what's next, Sarah replied. She had taken to organizing their father's things, but John could see how her usually steady demeanor was cracking. There's a reason Dad laid this out for us, and maybe there's something bigger we're supposed to learn. John nodded. He felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This was about more than just their father's will, it was about their family's legacy, about the love they had all been raised with. As the hour approached, they gathered back at the kitchen, the mood thick with uncertainty. For a moment, the three of them exchanged glances, mirroring each other's fears and hopes. It was then that John realized they needed to approach this together, not just as siblings but as a family. The call rang in, its sound echoing through the quiet house. As they answered, John's heart raced. The lawyer's voice was smooth, professional, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Thank you for gathering. I know this is a difficult time, but your father had specific requests. Let's begin at first." It felt like a list of formalities. There were assets to discuss, allocations to address. But as the call continued, John's focus sharpened. He noticed Mike's fidgeting turning to stillness, and Sarah's eyes widening as the lawyer spoke of certain provisions that none of them had anticipated. "Now, regarding the private trust your father established." In an instant, the weight of the conversation shifted. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Private trust?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" "To gain access to the trust," the lawyer continued, "all three of you must fulfill a requirement laid out in the document. It specifies a series of family meetings over the next several months to address unresolved issues, as well as collective decisions you must make." He believed that healing your bonds was crucial. John could practically feel the air thicken with tension. "You mean to say, we need to air out everything? Every hurt? Just to get what's ours?" His voice was incredulous, yet he recognized the necessity in his father's demand. Mike groaned, leaning back in his chair, disbelief etched across his face. "This is insane. Why would Dad do this?" And just as they were trying to digest the implications, the lawyer dropped another bombshell. "Additionally, the trust will not provide any funds unless all siblings acknowledge their commitment to these meetings. It's meant to foster unity, preserving the family's legacy." Before he could finish, John felt a rush of emotion, a mix of anger and disbelief. It was as if their father was calling from beyond the grave, forcing them to confront their demons, not just their grief. Why didn't he just say it outright? Sarah exclaimed, shaking her head in frustration. Why did he have to leave it like this? Because he knew us, John said quietly, his anger melting into understanding. Their father had always believed in the power of family. He must have known it would take more than just an inheritance for them to heal. As the call wrapped up, the gravity of it all settled in. They were bound by more than blood, they were tethered by their father's wishes. Would they find the strength to confront their past, or would this newly revealed truth further drive them apart? A silence engulfed them as they processed what had just happened. Questions lingered, heavy in the air. Would this journey lead to healing, or deeper rifts? Just when he thought they had reached a breaking point, John felt a flicker of determination. He wasn't about to let this be the end. "We can do this," he said, resolution filling his voice. But as they sat in the fading light of the kitchen, John knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. With the trust demanding their unity, what buried secrets and forgotten emotions would rise to the surface next? The following morning rolled in quietly, but the unease lingered like a fog that refused to lift. John woke early, the sun barely making its way through the window. He kept replaying their father's words in his mind, a mix of anxiety and resolve brewing within him. The weight of the trust brought an urgency that threatened to consume him. He dragged himself out of bed, hoping the physical motion would clear his head. No such luck. He headed into the kitchen, the empty room echoing with memories of laughter and warmth. All that seemed left now was the aftermath of grief and the uncertainty of what was to come. Mike emerged shortly after, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked fragile, as if the previous day's revelations had aged him. "You still think we can get through this?" he asked, his voice low. It sounded almost like a plea. "Yeah, I really do," John replied, surprising even himself with the certainty in his voice. "But we have to commit to it. We can't ignore the problems any longer." Mike leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Does it even matter? We've all had our issues. It's going to be a nightmare, John." "Maybe it is, but it's our nightmare to face together," John responded, a growing fire in his belly. They couldn't keep slipping further into their individual struggles, it was time to confront their past. Sarah joined them moments later, her hair tousled. She glanced between the two brothers, her expression still holding traces of the previous day's hurt. "I didn't sleep well," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I keep thinking about everything we've swept under the rug." "We're going to face it, all of it," John reassured her, trying to inject some optimism into the air. "Today, we start." "Right," Mike said skeptically, his fingers tapping against the table again. "But how do we even begin?" They shared a long look, and after a pause, Sarah pushed forward. "What if we start with whatever we can?" The idea hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. "We could write down everything, all the things we've never said." The suggestion sparked a mix of reactions, anticipation and dread intermingling. The idea of pouring out emotions felt like throwing open the floodgates, but perhaps that's exactly what they needed. "Fine. I'll go first," Mike said reluctantly, straightening his back. "But you all have to promise to be honest. No more holding back." John watched him, heart racing. "Agreed." They gathered around the table, papers and pens in hand. John took a deep breath and started jotting down his thoughts, trying to steady the tremor in his hand. Memories flowed faster than expected, moments of love but also pain, things their father had tried to shield them from but had ultimately left unchecked. Hours slipped by as they filled the table with scribbles and ideas. The atmosphere shifted gradually. With each confession, walls began to crack, a fragility unveiled. Sarah spoke about feeling neglected, burdened with expectations that had left her breathless, while Mike revealed his feelings of inadequacy, how he'd always sought their father's approval and never felt he measured up. An ache settled in John's chest as he listened, realizing how alone they had all felt, each swimming in their grief separately. The web of their history intertwined was thick with misunderstanding. It dawned on him they had always been united in spirit, just divided by feelings they didn't know how to share. As the sun dipped low, casting shadows that melded into a softer light, John sensed a breakthrough, a thread connecting them all. They had ventured into the dark corners, and while it was painful, it felt transformative. With the table covered in papers, they looked at each other, faces tired but somehow bright with clarity. Heartbeats synchronizing, an understanding humming quietly between them. They were doing this together. "Next meeting?" Mike ventured, his voice stronger as the weight of unshared burdens began to lift. "Next week?" Sarah proposed, determination reflecting in her eyes. John nodded, a sense of hope swelling in his chest. Little did they know, this was just the beginning, with deeper secrets stirring just below the surface. But as they closed the evening, a feeling of unease settled again, whispers of unsaid thoughts lingering. What would they uncover next? What shadows waited to be revealed, hidden truths waiting to shake their foundations yet again? The next day dawned with a strange clarity. John woke earlier than usual, the sunlight streaming in as if to welcome him with open arms. He felt a soft flicker of hope but was cautious, aware of the work left to tackle. The memories of last night's revelation sat heavy in his mind, mixed with the anticipation of diving deeper into their shared past. After a quick shower and a cup of coffee, he headed to the kitchen again, hoping the warmth of the sun would wrap around him like a comforting blanket. Mike was already there, hunched over the table, scribbling furiously. A pile of papers beside him showed evidence of his restless mind. "Something on your mind?" John asked, settling across from him. Mike looked up, his brow furrowed. There's so much to sort through." I haven't even touched half of what I wrote yesterday. I feel like we opened Pandora's box. John nodded slowly. Yeah, but sometimes we need to open it to see what's inside. We owe ourselves that much. As they spoke, Sarah appeared, demeanor more spirited than the day before. I thought of something, she said, holding a bright yellow notepad. What if we write a letter to Dad? Even though he's gone, we can tell him everything we wished we could. Maybe it'll help us move forward. The suggestion filled the room with a hesitance but also excitement. John couldn't help but feel that Sarah was right. Words had power. They could hold both the weight of their frustrations and the grace of their forgiveness. Let us do it, Mike said, his voice steady. I think it's a good way to release some of this pressure, to say what we weren't able to before. They gathered again, pens in hand, and began to reflect. Each word felt like a step into the unknown, forging paths through the thickets of emotion. John wrote about missed moments, the times he needed guidance but felt lost instead. He thought of the camping trips, the lessons learned, and the quiet slip between what was once perfect and what had unraveled. Time slipped away, and when they paused to breathe, John felt a shift in the atmosphere. Their shared vulnerability wove tighter bonds between them. As he looked up, he caught Mike furtively wiping a tear away. I never realized how much I wanted his approval until now, Mike admitted, voice trembling. And to face that it may never come feels like a brick in my chest. Me too, Sarah chimed in, her voice soft but firm. I've carried so much regret about things I wished I could change. It's exhausting. Then let it go, John said gently, feeling a newfound strength. This is just words now, but we can carry lighter hearts after this. The room filled with an unseen warmth, a collective release of emotion that had been pent up for years. They weren't just sharing words, they were sharing souls. As they finished their letters, the sense of accomplishment washed over them, but it was tinged with a subtle fear of what lay ahead. Now, what? Mike asked, glancing at the letters in front of them. We read them, John proposed, his heart pounding. Together. Silence erupted as they exchanged glances, fear creeping in again. Questions hung thick in the air. Were they ready to face their truths out loud? Would the echoes of the past still haunt them, or would they find solace in this vulnerability? It was then that a flicker of doubt snuck in. Were they truly prepared for the outcome? What if this opened up wounds they'd never meant to reopen? That uncertain moment hung heavily until Sarah finally nodded, a mix of bravery and apprehension in her expression. Let us do it. No turning back now. As they each braced for the emotional unveiling, another layer of their past awaited discovery. It loomed like shadows on the walls, ready to surface in the rawest form. What deeper truths would their letters unveil? Would those revelations bring them closer together or threaten to pull them apart even more? John's heart raced as he listened to Mike and Sarah prepare to read their letters, the weight of anticipation hanging thick in the air. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was a bridge to their father, a channel of emotions ready to flood into the open. Who goes first? Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He fidgeted with the edges of his letter, glancing between John and Sarah, both of whom wore expressions blending encouragement with apprehension. I'll go, John said, taking a deep breath. The moment felt monumental, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to dive. He unfolded his letter, fingers trembling at the thought of what lay ahead. Dad, I miss you. I miss the sound of your laughter, the way you always knew how to fix things when they broke cars, hearts, sometimes even me. I wish I had known how important it was to talk, to share. I didn't realize how much I needed your guidance until now, until it was too late, he began, his voice thick with emotion, each word flowed out like a release valve, the burden of regret lifting with every sound. I wish I could tell you how hard it's been, watching the family struggle. I let fear cloud my judgment, and I hurt Sarah in the process. I misjudged her, when all she has done is pour love into our lives. I'm scared of losing what we had, but I'm here, ready to fight for what you always believed in, family. He paused, taking a shaky breath. Emotions bubbled up, unrestrained. Looking up, he noticed Mike tearing up, while Sarah's gaze was unwavering and intense. Your expectations crushed me at times, yet you shaped who I am. I wish we'd spoken more, grown together instead of at odds. I want to be the man you always envisioned me to be, a son you could be proud of. Let this trust be a reminder of the bonds we built, and the understanding we must nurture. I love you, Dad. With that, John felt a weight lift as he folded the letter closed, the finality grounding him. Wow, Mike murmured, his voice quavering. That was a lot. Thank you, John said, his heart at once lighter and still heavy with yearning. Your turn. Okay, Mike said, clearing his throat. He took a moment before beginning, his voice trembling as he held the folded paper. Dad, there are things I regret, words unspoken. I always felt like I was in your shadow, a ghost trying to keep up. I want you to know that I loved you, that I wanted your approval, perhaps too much. I've spent my life trying to prove I could be the man you wanted me to be. I also thought you felt disappointed in me more often than not. John's heart sank as he listened. The pain in Mike's voice echoed a familiar hurt, but in that moment also seemed transformative. I didn't realize how much weight I was carrying until I saw you leave us. My heart aches for the things I never got to say. I wish I had trusted you to see me for who I truly was, the good and the bad. I want to forge a new path, not just for the family but for myself, to find peace within me. Above all, I promise to honor your wishes to prioritize our family. As Mike concluded, silence enveloped them for a heartbeat raw, powerful. The vulnerability in the room was palpable. Wow, Sarah echoed, her voice catching. That was beautiful, Mike. Feeling emboldened, she took a deep breath and began. Dad, it's always hard to share feelings. Growing up, I felt pressure to be perfect. I feel like I carried the weight of your expectations, thinking that's what love looked like. But it never truly felt like enough. I never wanted to disappoint you. John could feel the tears escaping Sarah's eyes as she spoke. Each word seemed to unfurl layers of hurt. I wish you could have seen how deeply I yearned for your approval. I want you to know I loved you fiercely, despite the burdens. Learning about the inheritance has stirred so many emotions: fear, jealousy, sadness, but it also opened a door. I want us to remember the joy you gave us, to embody your spirit of generosity. Let's share laughter over memories instead of getting lost in resentment. I just want us to be whole again, as a family. I hope you are. Watching over us, urging us to find our way back. As she finished speaking, there was a stillness that bound them tightly together. John felt the embrace of a familial spirit surrounding them, warmth pooling in his heart. What next? Mike finally whispered, glancing around the table. John felt a shimmering hope, realizing that they had ventured into darkness but emerged together, stronger. We keep talking, we keep listening, he said earnestly. Shadows of uncertainty remained, but they had taken significant steps towards healing. Each letter had given way to an open dialogue, a newfound commitment to face the storms that lay ahead. With collective determination, they knew this was not the end, just the beginning of their journey. United by their father's wishes and vulnerabilities, they took a step into the future, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As they packed their letters away, the air hummed with new possibilities, filled with the promise of renewed love and understanding. And just as they began to feel exhilarated by this new path, Sarah looked at her brothers, a smile gracing her lips. Next week? The follow-up meeting will be interesting. Definitely, Mike replied, a hint of optimism lighting his gaze. John chuckled lightly, it's going to be okay. And as they lingered in the kitchen, laughter bubbling amongst them once more, John felt the warmth return, a spirit of resilience growing stronger than the shadows of the past. Now, I have to tell you something important. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because it really makes a difference. And please, comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. This is the moment to show your support and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand how important it is to keep this community alive and thriving.